All right, guys, back on Southeastern 14 with Max Barr, and we are sharing our thoughts on another SEC basketball matchup for the upcoming weekend as Arkansas is going to take on Oklahoma. That's a road trip for the Hogs, gassing up the Must Bus, hitting the road, headed to Norman, and they are going to square off ESPN2, 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Before we talk about that game, let's tell you, as always, about our friends at Bet Online with the holiday season off and rolling. NFL's in full stride, NBA and NHL midseason form. We got to tell you about Bet Online, who is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info, up-to-the-minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, predictions. Bet Online, the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports, not just the big four. They've got MMA, international soccer, all the info you need available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. So all you have to do, head over to Bet Online today. Use that promo code BLEAV, BELIEVE, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, Max, where we start breaking down this matchup is probably who's not going to play is the first starting point, and that is Trevon Brazile. Severe ankle sprain was the wording used by Eric Musselman, and so sounds like it would be very unlikely that he would play in this game. So that is not ideal for the Hogs, which we know now have won back-to-back games, beat Duke, beat Furman, have looked pretty good in doing so. But without Brazile, this is an interesting, matchup because we talked about, and like everyone who's watched our channel over the past, couple of years, we're like, when we bring up Oklahoma, it's usually, Oklahoma's not really been what they thought, they would be under Porter Moser just yet. And that's kind of been the talk over the past couple of seasons. Not the case this season. They're 8-0 right now. They've got some good wins too. Iowa, USC, Providence. And so the Sooners feeling really good about themselves. I also said this game was in Norman. I apologize. This game's in Tulsa. I knew it was in the state of Oklahoma somewhere. So nonetheless, this should be kind of a fun game here. But with no Brazile, it's, not the easiest matchup at all here for the Hogs.
Yeah, being played in Tulsa. It's about 2 hours, I want to say northeast of Norman. So I would call it like a semi-home for Oklahoma, if you want to call it that. It's not a
The
true
Hogs will
road
be
game.
there. The Hogs will be there.
Hogs will
The
be
Must
there.
Best crew will be there.
Hogs will be there. So it's not a true road game, as what it looks like on paper. Not a true road game. If you average out the analytics sites to get a anticipated spread, it'll land somewhere around Oklahoma favored by a possession or two. My prediction right now would be about Oklahoma -3, maybe even 4 without Brazile. Man, I'm hurt for Brazile. I'm hurt. I really am, because not only do I love watching him play, we saw what happened to the spacing of this offense when he went out last year. And you saw it happen to North Carolina last year when they lost Brady Manick. You see it happening to Michigan State this year when you lose Joey Hauser. When you lose that shooter at the 4, it changes the entire team. It changes everything. You do not have the right spacing. It changes everything. It changes the offense. So I'm a little worried. A little worried for Arkansas here, because Oklahoma ranks 19th in the country in assist rate defense. And we've seen how stagnant the ball can get sometimes for that Arkansas offense. Now take away a little bit of the spacing, and this Oklahoma defense knows how to put the clamps down. So it's going to come down to clean offense, clean shots. Is it just going to be Tramon Mark shaking and baking, rising and fire from mid-range, hoping it goes in, making tough shots? If it's looking like that, might be a tough game here for Arkansas. What are you seeing out of this one, Blake?
Well, I think with, what we've talked about with Arkansas is, like we mentioned, there have been some inconsistencies, those kind of things, but it does feel like there is a clear divide in terms of scoring, and
Yes.
not just looking at the percentages, right? But it is, which you could just look at that and say there's a clear divide. With Mark averaging 17 points, Battle basically averaging 17 points too. Brazil's averaging 11. Take that out of the mix. And, like you mentioned, kind of breaking down different things, it's beyond that, like, who is that next guy? Now, we
Yeah.
know that Devo Davis can step up in big games and make plays. We've seen this do this time and time again throughout his college career. Ellis, we know he's had to do that for Louisville before, right? Like he's used to being in that role where if he's asked to step up and, do a lot of things, he can do it. But to this point, it has been kind of one of those things where if Battle, if he has an off game here, it's probably going to be tough for Arkansas to win. Like it's going to be a big challenge. And so I think that's the kind of what I'm most curious about is to see, knowing that guess what? Oklahoma knows that too. And they know that really the primary focus, although, like we said, there are other guys that can beat you on this team. I'm just curious to see how this plays out because, like we mentioned, the 3-point shooting for Arkansas started off great, but it's been a little hit or miss at times. Now, they've shot a better percentage the past couple games. They haven't taken as many, which is good. They don't need to be taking 33s a game. This team should never do that. And so I'm curious to see offensively, like you mentioned, sort of, talked about ball can be stagnant a little bit, all those different things. I really want to see what we get here from Arkansas on the offensive side with Brazile out because it does take out a different, he's a unique player. We say that all the time in terms of like what he can do from a skill set standpoint. So I'm curious to see how they approach this offensively against a good defensive team that, percentage wise is doing pretty good, whether top 10 in effective field goal percentage defense. It's a pretty good Oklahoma team. And they played some good offensive teams at this point and held them to pretty low numbers, right? So that's what I'm most curious about here for Arkansas. You can't beat yourself in a game like this because Oklahoma's too good defensively. And you've also got to find a way to get good shots. And you can't just have one guy with the ball in his hands and everybody else is standing around trying to figure out what to do. You've got to have a lot of movement here, I think, to be able to, attack this Oklahoma team on the defensive side. And so, yeah, like can they step up and do that in a big game here away from home? Because away from home so far, they've not looked good.
Yeah, and if you're looking at Oklahoma, very balanced attack, very hard to prepare for. You have four guys that they all use at about a 22% usage rate, and that's Javian McCollum, Otega Owe, then the two big men, John Hoogley and Sam Godwin. So all four of those guys, they're gonna split up the usage. It's not just going to be a one man attack the whole game. So it's going to take a consistent 40 minutes of defense to stop this Oklahoma team with a balanced attack. Let's look at Arkansas's defense. What's the best part of it? Their block percentage, their block rate. They are unbelievable at protecting the rim. But how does that change now without Brazile? You still have Chandler Lawson, who I have just been insanely impressed with. You still have Mekhi Mitchell and Jalen Graham's getting some more minutes in, but Brazile is the team leader in blocks. So how does they have the top 5 block rate in the nation right now? Does that drop down, a lot, or does Chandler Lawson keep that up there? How does Arkansas protect the rim without Brazile? I'm a little bit worried about. But yeah, John Hoogley, actually, little rewind back into the offseason. Hoogley was almost pinpointed by our very own Trilly Donovan on Twitter to go to Ole Miss. Flipped last minute to Oklahoma. We could have seen him in the SEC. He's a quality big man over from Pitt in the ACC. So, man, Oklahoma's balanced. That's one thing I'm worried about. This Arkansas defense is going to have to play a full 40 minutes if they're going to keep this balanced attack out of the paint.
You went to it before I could get to it. I am dubbing this the Chandler Lawson game.
All
because
right.
if Arkansas is going to win,
Yep.
it needs to be the Chandler Lawson game, in my opinion. I think he is he's the X factor here. Like whatever
Yes.
wording you want to use. Like I think this is a game where they need him to be big in this one. Because I think it's going to be necessity. And I don't even mean just from a scoring standpoint. I'm not just saying that because he came off his best scoring game of the year. I mean, mostly on the defensive side. I think they're going to need him to grab rebounds. They're going to need him to block shots. They're going to need him to stay out of foul trouble. All those things. Like those, they need him on the floor, I think, in a game like this without Brazile. So I think that's what winds up being the difference here. Because, too, it's like you look at how efficient Oklahoma's been in terms of, inside the perimeter, not a team that's going to get a lot of their points from three. And so that's where you've got to be able to defend and you've got to be able to grab some extra rebounds. Don't give them extra opportunities because I think they've been pretty good at grabbing offensive rebounds, if I'm not mistaken, and looking at some of their numbers. So
they're top 40.
Yeah. So, and so that's important. You want to limit those extra opportunities. So, yeah, man, this is an interesting matchup to me because look, getting Mark back was huge because we know
Yep.
now, okay, he's good to go. At least you have him, right? Because if you're looking at this matchup without Brazile or without Mark, I mean, I'm like, sorry, I'm picking Oklahoma. But I tell you, Max, this is another one of those games. You had the feeling we picked the Alabama Purdue game. We kind of had the feeling in the Arkansas Duke game. I don't know. I don't. Maybe I'm wind up being wrong here because I do think Oklahoma defensively, if Arkansas does not have a great offensive game plan here, and you see some of that sort of stagnant play on that end, they're going to get beat. But I just think this is not the worst matchup for the Hogs here, and I think it actually sets up okay in terms of the way that they play. Oklahoma's also they're going to get down the floor. We know that. It's getting to the free throw line too. Like we know Arkansas, it's important to get to the free throw line. We talked about SEC teams that have done that over the past couple of years, for like Arkansas, A&M, teams like that, where offensively it's not just run your offense and you feel pretty good about scoring every possession. It's maybe get to the free throw line a little bit because you're not going to have some offensive possessions that are great. I'm going to go with the Hogs here. I don't know why. I kind of have the feeling on this one that even without Brazile, we've seen them kind of rally, without Mark and win a big game. But, also too, you can say, what's the differences, right? Without a Brazile, without a Mark, like what's the differences in terms of how you play? There's significant differences, both guys being out, but without Brazile, this is where Chandler Lawson. Like they need him big here. I'm going to say he has a big game. Give me the Hogs and a slight victory here. I think this is close the entire way.
I like it. You mentioned free throws. I'm glad you mentioned free throws. Real quick, Oklahoma is not a team that shoots free throws a lot. They're very efficient offensively, but they do not get to the line. They're bottom 100 in the nation in free throw rate, whereas Arkansas is number 9. So Oklahoma is not going to kill this team with fouls. If Chandler Lawson can stay on the floor, Mekhi Mitchell and Jalen Graham can step up, you might not really feel that loss of Brazile defensively. But on the offensive end, I was just while you were talking, looking through the Arkansas minute distribution, we said this is going to be a Chandler Lawson game. Is it maybe a Jeremiah Davenport game as well? Going a little bit small ball and using the spacing offensively a little bit more. We haven't seen him have one of his big games yet. Could see a big 3-point game out of Davenport. With all that being said, though, I'm gonna go Oklahoma, just because I don't know how this team is going to look without the spacing from Brazile at the 4. But don't get me wrong, I'm all on board of the Chandler Lawson game. I'll be rooting for our boy Chandler Lawson.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see. I think this is a close game. Like I said, I'd be surprised if either team runs away with this one. I think these two teams, it's an interesting matchup from a basketball standpoint. I think when you see what the strengths and weaknesses are of these two teams, I think it's just an interesting matchup. So fun dynamic here with this one, and we will see how it unfolds in Tulsa, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. But we're doing previews for all the other big games on the SEC slate this weekend, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well. That helps us out. And we appreciate you guys watching, as always, here at Southeastern 14. And we will talk to you again here soon on the channel, presented by Bet Online.